Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa. This is Harmoniously podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel.
Hi, Rachel. All right, so we're going to talk today about how to prepare for a ketamine treatment. But before we start this podcast, so I would like to invite everyone who's listening or watching, and Rachel and myself as well, to just tune in into this podcast. So let's just tune in together by taking a breath. If you want and can, you can also close your eyes with us. And we just take a little breath to really come into present, to be arriving to this podcast and be able to absorb all this useful information. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always nice to get a little centered and connected. So I love that. And breath is such a great way to do it. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm excited to be back with you. And hopefully, we can talk a little bit today about, setting up to kind of maximize your experience with ketamine, how to get the most out of it. Obviously, there's a lot of things that we can plan for with these types of sessions. So I think it's kind of important to review some of the nuance. So we'll kind of unpack some of that today.
Absolutely. And before doing that, I would like to ask you again, who's ketamine for?
Yeah, good question. So, at least in the off label category of how we're using ketamine currently, where we've seen its greatest successes is definitely with some of our depression, treatment resistant depression, especially.
Mm.
We use it here in the home setting with some of our generalized anxiety and anxiety conditions. And a lot of the PTSD or post traumatic stress disorders have seen quite a bit of success. That's not, entirely a perfect, this is the only people it helps, because I think there's lots of things that relate to our anxiety, right? Like we're stuck and we're feeling
Mm-hmm.
perhaps that we need some plasticity, like we're just stuck in our own brains. So, and I think a lot of these conditions may ebb and flow throughout our life. Everyone has anxious and depressive thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that ketamine's great for everyone, but certainly there's a lot of people that I think don't fall under one of those classic kind of three categories that this may also be helpful for. We're expanding our consciousness, we're stretching a little bit. I think it can be very useful in lots of those settings. And obviously, this is something that just a provider and yourself will kind of determine together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's beautiful. And so, how can we prep for ketamine to have the maximum of benefits from this treatment?
I think there's so much nuance here, right? Like all psychedelics and all of these kind of non-ordinary states, there can really be quite a bit. And I even like zoom out a few days in
Mm-hmm.
advance. Right? So like maybe we're
Absolutely.
thinking about our sessions and we're like, oh, maybe Tuesday, maybe Thursday, or Fridays are my light days or whatever it might be. I kind of like formulating this in a way that like a few days prior, it's good to be kind of thoughtful about content that we watch, right? Like I'm a big true
Mm-hmm.
crime fan, so sometimes I'm a little less true crime and maybe a little bit more nature videos. I think these are things that really influence our subconscious,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. I
right?
noticed
And
that with other psychedelic.
yeah, I
Absolutely.
was
So
gonna say,
important. Yeah.
now your experiences with a lot of the other psychedelic categories.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you find that that's similar with other psychedelic preps that like we set up with like a big macro view? Like this isn't just like hurry, 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 get to the destination. This is like a big. I know in
Mm-hmm.
some practices, right, we prepare months in advance, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
For example, I'm very knowledgeable with ayahuasca,
yeah.
and you definitely want to prep month in advance, depending on if you're taking some medications, or
Mm,
anyway, you want to prep at least 2 weeks in advance also with food, which I think that would be different with ketamine. You don't need to have a special diet to follow before doing the treatment, right?
yeah, true. But we don't ask for
Okay,
anything terribly specific. Yeah, but I know with
that's good.
ayahuasca and some of the other psychedelics, this can be really beneficial. So there's also no detriment, right, to saying that we would like to set up ketamine experiences in the same way. And I think that
Hmm.
kind of comes down to like what feels best for the participant, like what feels best for you. Like, do
Hmm.
you want to set this up more ceremoniously, right? And maybe be very mindful of your diet, or perhaps it's a jumping off point, right? To say, like, I am going to focus more on diet because that influences our
Hmm.
mood, anxiety and depression terribly. So I don't
Yeah.
think they're mutually exclusive, but I think it's at least worth saying it's not necessary for ketamine treatments, but
Uh-huh.
could be also very beneficial as it is for some of the other
Mm.
psychedelic prep. Yeah.
Yeah, as it is not necessary, that is good for the ones that wants to work with some psychedelic medicine because they think that could benefit them.
Yeah.
And for some people, certain strict diets, like the one for ayahuasca, can be very hard to follow at first. So there can be a like it can be good that with ketamine you don't have this strict diet, but it's definitely also a good idea, as you said,
Yeah.
that someone can prepare in advance and also check the diet
Yeah.
that they're following, that so that can be a real transformation. We are, I think, everyone approaching this kind of medicine because they want a transformation in their life and they weren't able to get this transformation with any other practices.
Yeah.
And so that is really a good starting point. Like taking this, the treatment is a serious process, a process of transformation for to get the life that you really dream and want.
Yeah. I think that is such an important point, Mel, because it's so true that, we're seekers, right? And we're on
Mhm.
this adventure seeking things that can transform us. And I always kind of stay focused on the idea that like everything we need to transform is already within us. So we're
Mhm.
just utilizing tools, right, to access these pieces, right? And the tool may be ayahuasca, the tool may be ketamine, the tool may be diet, right? But it's really
Mhm.
important to see it as a global kind of way that we transform because it is a little bit of all of these things, right?
Mhm.
Diet. Maybe it's our spiritual practices. Maybe it's our self care. Maybe it's our content reviewing, right? My social media is now just full of like learning and like dogs and like
Yeah, I was gonna say cat.
animals and like little learning and psychology, things that really interest me. So now I feel like it's so fulfilling for me to see it versus like all the things I'm envious of, like, oh, they're taking a wonderful vacation or oh, this or that. But I think it really is all those little things and it's finding the combination of them that work really well for you. And I think that's a
Mhm.
really great like macro lens of like how to set up for prep is that
Yes.
we're utilizing these medicines as tools and it's not the only part of the picture. We want to think about the
Mhm.
other, right? Our diet, maybe our
Yes.
content, maybe our social media, maybe our self-care. And I think that
Yeah.
starts days, weeks, months prior. So
And
absolutely.
definitely the content, as you were saying, especially prior to a session with a
Yeah,
psychedelic, is so important because what I learned and noticed by working with plants medicine is that sometimes if you like consumed some of those, let's say, negative content,
yeah,
what you do a half of your treatment is just cleaning that content from your mind, that
yeah,
actually, especially images, really like hit your subconscious.
yeah,
So even if you think or you think that didn't do anything to you, actually will come out during the session. And so it's so good to, before, as a preparation, to, as you said, spend time in nature or maybe check some more positive content so that you're like, it's nurturing your mind. So you're nurturing your mind in a positive way. And during the treatment, you can focus on what you care for and what you want to work during the treatment and not on just cleaning the
yeah.
content you have been watching.
Totally. Because we want to have these be focused sessions and that happens, right? Sometimes we do have some bric-a-brac to clean up in there or subconscious little pathways we need to brush up. But I think you're so right. It takes some thoughtfulness and we can really create a more nurturing environment for these experiences to achieve what we're trying to with these, right? To stretch our consciousness, to see ourselves with a different perspective. And
Mhm.
content's a huge part of that. And I've seen it very much start to color and influence even ketamine sessions, which can be a more mild experience than some of the other, psychedelics. So thoughtfulness for sure, I think makes a big deal in content, especially the things we consume,
Hmm.
especially I've had, clients have like an argument with a partner shortly
Mm.
before.
Oh, yeah.
These types of relational things that can really color experiences as well. So my kind of, rule of thumb is truly that like, this isn't mandatory. So you don't have to like, they said Thursday, I'm just going to do Thursday. Like you can always be more flexible. And I think it's really nice to be gentle with ourselves and say,
Hmm.
hey, it didn't work out Thursday. Thursday was really chaotic. My boss was really on me. Or I was late leaving work, or I had a meeting I didn't expect. It's okay to say, okay, today's not a good day, and move to maybe the weekend or another day that works better. Timing's
Hmm.
important around our session dates, but it's not the most important thing, right? So we want to make sure we're setting ourselves up for success. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand totally. Like it would be very hard to like have a very stressful day at work
Yeah.
and then do a ketamine session after
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
I understand that it's finding that fine line in between not wanting to postpone it every time, because that
Yeah.
would be definitely you can work that with a coach while you keep postponing instead of doing your work. But at the same time also not be fixated that it has to be that day if the day really is not the right one, because there's all this stressful or other kind of events that prevent you to be really in communion with this medicine and get the benefits from it.
Yeah. And it's being in good communication with ourselves. And so I'm here to grant everyone permission to like have some grace, right? And say, oh, I tried for today, but it didn't work out. And I think that's perfectly fine. That's normal life. So it's totally fine to have a really great plan and have it go south and need to make a different plan. Like that's the way most of life
Hmm.
works. So it's having some flexibility with it and honoring
Yeah.
wherever you are. I think that really is what helps us attune to self better. And that I think really helps us getting more out of the sessions.
Yeah, and also like as either in Harmoniously we offer ketamine with a therapy or with coaching, or as well whoever also wants to have the access to ketamine, they're already working with their own therapist. They can also work out this with their therapist or coach
Yeah.
about like um the schedule of the session, and as you said about all this about not postponing but also be gentle, like really finding the middle ground that really works for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really important thing to note. Like psychotherapy, coaching, all of this can help when we start to see these patterns emerging, which is what we're here to do, right? We're here to notice our own patterns, not with like angst and, disdain for self, but more of a compassionate lens. And
Hmm.
so I think that's why we see psychotherapy and coaching making ketamine treatments synergistic, right? We just get more out of both when we combine them.
Yes.
That's a great place to add them in, we're starting this process. So totally agree. So we've kind of covered a macro of like maybe the thoughtfulness that we want to embody the days and weeks even prior to experiences. And then maybe let's kind of go micro and go like day of
Hmm.
experience, right?
Yeah,
So you're
absolutely.
planning for your day, you've had a pretty smooth day, you're planning for maybe it's 5 p.m. on a Thursday, right? That's your goal and everything's looking like it's aligning. Ketamine is a little different than some of the other psychedelics that we prepare for. And in general, ketamine has a fairly limited bioavailability. So we want to maximize this by doing a few things.
Hmm.
So the day of your experience, the one thing that I think helps quite a bit is being kind of focused on your hydration. We want to have really good hydration and not for nothing, but most of us are running around chronically dehydrated.
Hmm.
So I even suggest occasionally adding in things like electrolyte prep. So
Mm.
maybe what IV. I love coconut water for this. So
Ah,
lots of
yes.
yeah, helps us hold our volume better. When we have electrolytes, our body's not kind of losing its extra volume. We can hold it better. This is A, important for side effects, but B, it's really important to increase the bioavailability of this medicine. We have more volume to make it work better. So
Okay,
I think hydration is key. Yeah.
so it works with like water with hydration.
Yes. So I want people to be kind of thoughtful about their hydration intake on the days
Mm.
of their experience. So maybe starting the morning with their, normal routines, but then, oh yeah, I've got to drink my water today. I always have coconut
Mm.
water. So something like that on board. Maybe we take it to work with us.
So, and
And
what about like coffee or teas?
I love this question because I can say there are for sure a lot of people that are quite sensitive to caffeine.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to have your normal routine of, kind of your morning coffee or tea and it's caffeinated, I just recommend that you do so and kind of plan for your experience to be 6 to 8 hours later. So we don't want to
Mm.
have caffeine on board in the immediate preceding time period. Uh, some people avoid it day of, and I think that's perfectly fine to do. But we
Hmm.
don't necessarily have to like be
Okay.
terribly, thoughtful about it. But I do like it to not be on board right around the same time. I have seen it influence
Yeah.
experiences if it's too close to the
Oh,
experience.
yeah. Because I mean, you can expand on that more, but like caffeinated drinks, they hydrate us. They have
Mhm.
that effect, and so
Yep.
if hydration is so important, that definitely it counteract. But probably there's also other elements in the caffeinated drinks
Yep.
that may counteract ketamine. Can
Yeah,
you?
it's a stimulant, right? And it is, like, as you mentioned, probably the most important factor is that it is very dehydrating.
Yeah.
So, and it also can be a bit of a diuretic. So it pulls fluid off to dehydrate us, but then we may
Mm,
have to urinate more.
mm,
And ketamine can be a bit like we can feel less coordinated during the experience. So we don't want to be doing something that's going to have us up every 5 minutes to have to go pee or what have you. It's
mm,
harder to do. And also, it's just distracting from the experience. So if you're going to have your, coffee, tea in the morning, totally fine. Just make sure that your experience is planned for later in the day. And I think
hmm.
that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I guess that's also because if you drink coffee every day, and some people like that they have like caffeine withdrawal, so I imagine you don't want to have a headache when
Yeah.
you go for your treatment, but definitely so space it out enough so that you don't have that dehydration effect just
Yeah.
before the treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And candidly, like there isn't anything I'm doing on the earth that's ever going to not start with coffee for me. So I very much sympathize here. I absolutely have coffee on my day of my experiences. It's something that I'm just thoughtful about. And I try not to add more coffee in throughout the day. I'm definitely thinking about that a little bit more. So
Yeah.
I just encourage people to find their sweet spot, right? There are some people that don't have coffee every day and can skip it that day. That's
Hmm.
great.
Yeah.
Otherwise, just kind of being thoughtful around it.
And
And
also, I would
yeah,
say be mindful of other drinks that may have caffeine. That would be the same thing.
yeah,
So there's caffeine in many drinks we don't think.
yeah,
For example, there's many tea with caffeine.
yes,
And what about like herbal teas?
yeah.
Is there any herbals that will counteract or will have like some
Hmm.
negative effects with ketamine?
So in general, like it would be hard to go through all of them, but I can say if it's herbal and non-caffeinated in general, it's totally fine. Except for that some teas also have a bit of a diuretic effect and can be pulling fluid off of us. So kind of there are some that are right, like more um, like some of the
Fennel.
yes, fennel, detox teas, right? Things like that that might be purifying.
Hmm.
Um, I would probably avoid. And in general, anything that's like, so we don't want to have our sleepy time tea before our sessions.
Okay.
Anything that can be sedating in general. So I even have people avoid things like kava, things like
Oh yeah,
melatonin
yeah, yeah.
sometimes, some of our sleep aids. So if you're having something that's got some true like depressant activity in it, I would avoid that for your dose days. Absolutely.
Hmm. And what about food on the day? Like we said, like you don't really have to have a special diet before it, but what about the day of the treatment?
Yeah, I think it's important to be so, like, the takeaway is truly that you can have normal meals up until about 4 hours prior to your experience. I always ask folks to fast for at minimum 3 hours, and
Hmm.
4 hours is probably more ideal. We want to
Yeah.
have less in our stomach for a couple of reasons. One, it just improves the bioavailability of ketamine. Our body's not kind of bogged down processing other foods. It can prepare to kind of show
Hmm.
up and process ketamine. And two, because it absolutely decreases the nausea factor, because it can also be quite nauseating, as some other
Mm,
psychedelics are. So that kind of has a twofold benefit. But further than that, like if you're going to have breakfast or your meal prior to fasting, I even think about those meals. It's wise to have them be a bit cleaner or more easily digestible. So we want to
mhm,
think about cleaner foods. We want to think about less processed foods
mhm,
because they can really bog down our metabolism in a way that I've seen impact the experience even 4 to 6 hours later. So a
mhm.
healthier, kind of less processed meal, as we would do with some of the other
Yeah.
psychedelics, being very clean, without less refined sugars and seed oils and all the other extras.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Like even like for yoga practices in theory, no, I don't think everybody does it, but in
I know.
theory, you should eat 4 hours before your practice at least and be in an empty stomach because your system is just, as I said, can absorb better
Yeah.
and absorb better the energies or ketamine, the Ks. Also, as you mentioned, there's some nausea effect,
Yeah.
and you want your food to be fully digested and your stomach to be empty.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's a huge factor for the nausea as well. Like there are some really simple reasons why. But I have seen, metabolism is a big factor with any medication that we're
Mhm,
processing. So I think it's wise to be thoughtful around the foods that we're participating in. I've had people have like a really big kind of, fast breakfast, maybe greasy or, highly
mhm,
processed and have it really slow down the metabolism. So it can create more erratic or unpredictable psychedelic experiences, which is usually not as enjoyable for most of us. It may take longer
mm,
to kick in. It may take longer to offboard, so our body has more side effects following. So in general,
mm,
I think it's really wise to just be thoughtful around the foods that we're ingesting always, but definitely the day of kind of this type of
mhm.
experience.
What would
And
be some food you would suggest the day
yeah,
of?
I love fruits. They don't love everyone. So, as you tolerate fruits, I think really simple grains can be fine. So I try to avoid all seed oils and extras. So sometimes like a sourdough toast is just fine. It's plain, it's simple. I try to limit dairy. I think that sometimes can go either way for a lot of us. And the great majority of people are very lactose intolerant. So it can also
Mm,
create other issues. Vegetables are great. I try to think about how many times has this exchanged hands, right? Like, has it been folded, processed, added ingredients to? And then I kind of get a feel for maybe how processed it is. So, this is usually a meal that we're making at home or that's prepared somewhere, simple salads,
mhm,
fruits and vegetables, kind of have the minimal processing to them are things that I think about. I love protein. So, if you do have meats in that way, eggs, I think, are fine. Simple proteins, lean proteins are fine to include. I try to create a combination of like carbs and proteins. So,
mhm.
whatever, I know a lot of people are following keto or other types of
Yeah,
specialized diets. I think those work just fine here. I know a lot
okay.
of folks do intermittent fasting. I think those also do well here. I always just advise people that might have diabetes or blood sugar issues just to kind of be conscious of getting like, we don't want to fast for so long
Uh-huh.
that we're going, our blood sugar's dropped and we're hangry. And
Mm,
so kind of be thoughtful surrounding that area. And that's pretty specific to those that are, experiencing those types of conditions.
mhm. Yeah, and what about like you mentioned diabetes, but like I
Yeah.
was thinking about honey even before that. I know not for them, but for regular people. Like
Yeah.
because the honey, like in warm water, can
Yeah.
really help to if we feel hungry in that window that we're not eating, that can
Mhm.
help. But
Yeah.
what about
Yeah.
some honey on the day of treatment?
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really good kind of tip I give to people that are like, okay, I can't fast for 4 hours. I eat like every 2.5 hours or whatever it might be. Absolutely. Having a small kind of snack like warm lemon and honey before can be really satiating and
Mm,
also not kind of provide some of the negative stuff we're looking to do, which is really bog down metabolism, provide a whole lot of other, things to digest. So I think there, yeah, absolutely could be a great kind of standby if you're starting to get a little hangry at the 2 hour mark, which happens to us, right? So foods, I think, are one part. We've already talked about being hydrated. I think there are some other things to think about on the days of dosing. We want to think about I think even in the hours prior, I'm thinking about, where do we want to be? Do we want to be in our bed? Some people have a lovely, living space or a greenhouse room or wherever you're most comfortable,
Hmm.
but thinking about set and setting from,
Yeah.
even early on is important. And I know
Hmm.
this, quite a bit about with some of our other psychedelics, but the
Oh,
set and
yes.
setting component isn't something you think about 1 minute before. It's something you're kind of thoughtful about, right? All the way up
Hmm.
until moving into experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so essential with all the psychedelics, I would say. So essential to create the right set and settings. So the settings is like the actual space. And so you want to be comfortable, but also in a space that is inspiring. So whatever inspiring means for you, for some people, maybe putting some incense,
Mhm.
um, or maybe like really create a space as a ceremonial place. From other people who look more like really be comfortable with a comfortable mat, comfortable pillows, and so on. And also I've seen many people making a little altar
Mhm.
where they can put the stones, or they can put a photo, a picture of their loved ones, or any other thing that inspire you.
Yeah.
um, and I imagine that it would be the same for ketamine.
Very much. I think that kind of plays across the board and even through, right, like other altered states, right, like meditation. I'll be honest, even sometimes I set up my sleep that way. I'm like, this is my ceremony of sleep today.
Ah, yes.
So I think it's a beautiful way we get to show up for ourselves. And I think utilizing this medicine is just a really beautiful way to have, and some people love the ceremonial aspect and others are looking just to feel better and have kind of this therapeutic session. I don't think there's anything um, terribly off limits here, except
Hmm.
for it's really about the user, right? It's about the client, making sure you're comfortable. As you already mentioned, like the setting, right, is could be a little sunlight through a window. I love having fresh air. I like to be able to
Mm,
hear the birds, right? And then other people are like, oh, my neighbor's dog is barking the whole time. So it's about kind of figuring out what works best for you, what's
yeah.
soothing to you, what's comforting to you, what allows you to fully relax and kind of surrender to self, right?
Hmm.
And the session that we're in.
Yeah,
And
that made me
yeah,
think of a question like, will it be nice to have it in nature,
yeah,
or yeah. Okay, that's quick
yeah,
quick answer. And also, well, I guess about that, if you want to have in nature, you need to like make sure a bathroom is not too far away. That's
yeah,
something to consider always, because
totally.
you need to go and it's hard to move. So you need
Yeah,
to know that you're able to go to a bathroom
yeah,
pretty easily anyway. So that's one consideration.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and I
and
think
then
sunlight, we want to be, if it's like
sunlight.
noon,
Okay.
you don't want to be burned all day in the sun. You may not have as
Yeah.
close of an awareness. I always just kind of, if your outdoor space is safe and your peer support person's open to like being, available outside. I've had people have lovely experiences in the garden,
Mm.
beautiful lounge chair set up. I'm allergic to bees, so I
Oh, okay.
would
Yeah.
just make me more anxious. But by all means, if there's a beautiful outdoor space that's safe for you to be in, it's a good time of day, etc. I think it's perfectly fine. Yeah, it can
Yeah.
be really enjoyable.
Absolutely. And now the second question that's linked to this one. So, is there any mm, preferable time of the day? Does it have to be with? I mean, you mentioned day sunlight, so I guess it doesn't have to be at night. Like other,
Yeah,
like ayahuasca, mostly needs to be a night ceremony.
yeah,
Most of the traditions do not even start ceremony till it's dark outside.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah.
is
Well, I think ketamine differs in that way because we are doing a series of doses for the most part, that there's a
Mhm.
lot that we could explore here. And I typically err on the side of like what feels best for the client. Some folks really have a lot of us moms, right? That have kids running around. Like sometimes the early morning is the only time we have to ourselves that's kind of quiet. Kids are still
Mm,
asleep. And if our peer support person's ready for us and we have that time, sometimes waking up in the morning, first thing, early light can be a really beautiful time. For
mm.
most to my folks, I really do advise that the first sessions or two, we try for like late afternoon, early evening. But it's really just based on the idea that if we do this medicine too late, it does have kind of this relaxing kind of impact. And a lot of us are so, tired at the end of our day, had a
Okay.
big day, and we go into the experience, we could fall asleep. And we don't really want to sleep through the experience. We don't want to miss what's here for us. We want to be able to show up for it. So doing it too late can kind of go one way. Doing it too early, if you've been fasting overnight, for some folks, the longer we've been fasting, they can get more side effects to this medicine. So I don't always
Okay.
recommend that the first one or two sessions, but I encourage people to kind of play around with time of day for them. It usually kind of, because we're doing several sessions, ends up being more of like what can work with your sitter, right? So like when can your
Mm-hmm.
sitter be present? When can your peer support be available? When is the house calm, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or perhaps some of the folks that are doing this with psychotherapy, you're doing this on a schedule with your therapist, so they're going to be present with you or remotely present with you. So sometimes there are some other kind of scheduling nuances. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that can be a little different than sometimes the other psychedelics, but absolutely time of day I think can play a part. And also our metabolism is a little different throughout the day.
Mm.
So the medicines may impact us a little different throughout the day. And I always
Okay.
just kind of say, fold that in, like experiences will be more potent, less potent, kind of more profound and less profound. I think all of our psychedelics tend to have these undulations to them rather than just this linear, like better, better,
Yes.
better. It's more just folding in these waves. So I
Yeah.
think that's similar across the board.
Okay. Well, about also other psychedelic, about the waves is totally true. I think
Yeah.
that it's an important point to
Yeah.
mention because we may have a first experience that is like really profound,
Yeah.
and we may expect the same thing, or vice versa. The first experience is like nothing, almost we don't feel it,
Yeah.
and then we're disappointed. But it's not like that. It's really in waves, and the waves are uh, we say for the other psychedelics, like the spirits of the plant that know what you need at that time. And I think it's also a collaboration with our higher self. Our soul also knows what we need. So we probably needed a profound experience one time, and then we need something milder because we need to also, let's say, if we use a metaphor, like we are like a rock and we are like sculpting our sculpt of ourselves. So
Mhm.
sometimes you need to take a big piece out, sometimes just polishing. And so
Mhm.
that's why of the wave.
I love that analogy. And I think that absolutely sums that up because you're right. It's just always these undulations, right? Of
Hmm.
more profound, less profound. And even sometimes, and I will talk a little bit more next time about like the experience itself, but even
Hmm.
sometimes within the experience, right? There can be these kind of waves of kind of
Yeah.
potency or impact or insight that we're having. And I think that's most of life. So I think it's about riding these waves. And I think that
Hmm.
analogy is so beautiful and absolutely plays here.
Yeah.
Um, but back to our kind of setup, right? So ketamine has a few other kind of specifics that we utilize here. Ketamine, as I already said, can be kind of nauseating. So we set up our day, we've kind of been thoughtful, we've maybe been thoughtful about content surrounding our experiences in the days or weeks prior. We're moving closer to our experience. Maybe we're in our fasting time. Maybe we're pretty well hydrated now. We've thought about like our set and setting a little bit. I'm going to go home. Bed's the best place. Like I'm going to open the windows a little, whatever it might
Hmm.
be. I think, with ketamine, I tend to, and most providers I know do, we pre-treat for nausea with a medication called Zofran. There's some other ones we use as well, but there tends to be a bit of nausea for many people on the backside of an experience. So we find that if we're able to pre-treat for it, we can almost eliminate it. So generally
Okay.
speaking, about a half an hour prior to the experience kind of beginning, we'll want to make some time if you're using that. There are other things we can use though, right? Like we can use ginger products. A lot of folks use these ginger chews or ginger candies that can be really
Hmm.
helpful. I actually sometimes sip on ginger tea for about an hour prior. I love
Okay.
that part. So lots of ways we can achieve anti-nausea.
Mm.
But if you're going to use this pre-prescribed medicine, we do ask you to kind of take it about a half an hour ish prior to you
Okay.
sitting down to have medicine. So
Okay.
we want to make sure it's on board appropriately at that time
Hmm.
period.
Okay. And that's prior. Of course, I want
Yeah.
to mention during the treatment, nothing.
Yeah, exactly. During the treatment,
Okay.
it definitely helps to not have to do complicated tasks during, but that's why we plan it a little before. And also because the ketamine experience tends to be so brief that this typically will help us on that backside if we plan
Hmm.
for it that way.
Okay.
And
So,
then, yeah.
okay. And I was gonna, as you said, it's brief. So, how much
Mhm.
time do you want to block
Yeah.
for your treatment? And
Yeah.
also ask your peer support, your sitter.
Yeah. So we'd like the peer support person to be present for at least the beginning of your experience, all the way through. The experiences themselves tend to be in general, and obviously there's outliers, somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes. I've had a few people have experiences a bit longer. I've had a few be a little shorter. But in general, planning for about an hour and a half, and then maybe an hour to 4 hours afterwards before you feel kind of back to baseline. So you want to be able to, be upfront with your peer support if they live with you or if they're coming to visit.
Hmm.
It's something that we want to make sure we're all prepared for. There, as we just talked about, there can be moments where this maybe is a little longer or there's a different wave here. So it's nice to kind of fold that in and just make sure it's a good, sometimes 4 to 6 hours of time that we've kind of carved
Hmm.
out to have this experience, and also the post
Yeah.
experience, which we'll also
Yeah.
go over in another session, which I think
Hmm.
will be really important for most.
Yeah.
And
So once again, you want to like have 1, 2 hours before, so you ready to like you can either drink the ginger tea or other medication pre for the nausea, and also like make sure the space is all good, and also like take the time without stressing, I would say, right? Without
yeah,
stressing, and do everything, set up everything with calm. Also having the your peer support coming and set up everything with that person with like in all relaxation mode, and so that
yeah.
you can go into the treatment fine.
Absolutely. And I think even in that, sometimes, not all of us are fantastic at meditation, but perhaps doing like a guided meditation session. And we've got great meditations in the website that we offer.
Hmm.
Um, there's something that you prefer, but doing something like maybe just some breath work, right? Do a breath work practice. When yoga, Mel and I are both kind of yogis, we do a lot of really individualized breath work, really specific breath work. But one of my favorite quotes is, it's easier to calm the mind with the body than the body with the mind. We
Mm.
can't think ourselves calm, right? But if we use our breath, oftentimes we can tap into a different, kind of center of calm. So breath work can be a really powerful way to kind of set a centering or grounding prior to our experience, so that we can have a better opportunity to do, I think, just as you have said, Mel, to really connect to our higher selves, right? Like really surrender to what's here for us and seeing ourselves in
Mhm.
this different capacity and experiencing this non ordinary state, stretching this consciousness. And I think getting centered and grounded prior can be really powerful to help us do so.
Mhm.
Meditation, music, chant, prayer, mantra, all of those things I think play well in this space, setting up, moving into the experience itself. Do you agree?
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah. Even
Yeah.
I mean, if they have more time, maybe they can do a yoga class
Mhm.
and then go
Yeah.
home. Or if they're
Mhm.
yogi, they can do their own practice. But the yoga class and really
Mhm.
like, as you said, from the calm the mind with the body, and then go home and finish
Mhm.
to set up everything, and then having
Yes.
some breath technique, prayer, everything you just mentioned as well.
Yeah. Totally. So we're a little bit set up, hopefully, and hopefully some of those things resonate. Not everything is for everyone. So if
Mhm.
yoga's not your thing, right, that's cool. If meditation's not your thing, that's fine.
Mhm.
Maybe try breath work or a guided session. Or sometimes I just have folks watch nature videos right prior, just to
Mm.
get calm, like get centered, get, present in something that's outside of self, but something relaxing.
Yeah.
Um, some folks do take a walk around their
Mm.
neighborhood. Some of us live in these beautiful locations. So
Yes.
it's valuable to kind of spend time doing the things that really help you get centered and grounded, whatever those might be. I do recommend folks don't generally add in other substances that help them get relaxed. So perhaps like a lot of like the marijuana, THC, cannabinoids. I generally advise avoiding those right prior to our experience, as
Hmm.
they can really color an experience and sometimes can even have secondary psychedelic impacts. So, probably not advisable to use. There are case by case bases where this may be helpful, but in general, I advise people not to add in other substances prior to our experiences so that we can kind of have
Mm-hmm.
this organic experience or relationship with this one medicine, right?
Okay. That's very interesting. Like about
Yeah.
what with ayahuasca, you obviously, I mean, I don't know if it's obvious, but you can definitely do not mix
Mhm.
uh, marijuana with ayahuasca for sure. You also want to stop a couple of weeks prior to a
Yeah.
ceremony. And that's because the explanation is like marijuana, it, it's a medicine that is kind of pull us down in a sense, right? It's a
Yeah.
relaxing. So it's a pull opposite to what these other
Mhm.
medicine are doing. That is a higher, an experience of higher consciousness, and
Yes.
marijuana is more a different
Yeah.
energy that pulls you into this relaxation mode. So they counteract the effect of this psychedelic medicine. That's the higher effect, the higher consciousness effect.
Yes. And I think that definitely can play to the same, kind of character here with ketamine. So I think
Mm.
that's really reasonable to kind of avoid them on the whole for the most people, right? There's always some situations where I'm like, um, and then I think, I know for other psychedelics, this may not be as crucial, but I think with ketamine experiences, because we are going to be less coordinated and it is a bit more of a dissociative psychedelic, right? Where we have some of this brain and body kind of disconnection, which is a very therapeutic place here. What we find is that it tends to be very well choreographed with music. Music
Mhm.
tends to be one of the best friends of ketamine. So I like people to even spend some time prior, like explore some music that feels good to you, that works for you. My general recommendation is just lyric free,
Mhm.
knowing that some music can be really activating and uplifting, and other music can be more relaxing and kind of gentle. Uh, so, like jazz and classical, they can be very activating and almost chaotic sometimes in the experience, but
Mm.
use whatever is feeling right for that session, right?
Okay. Well,
Ambient, trance. Go ahead. What were you
yeah.
going to
Now I was thinking because you said jazz and classical.
say?
I was thinking, imagine metal music. That's
Right.
definitely.
That too. That too. Or like I always picture like my very favorite like rap and I'm like, that's just not it for this session, right? Like we want to choose music that's lyric free.
Yeah.
Lyrics tend to be very distracting in the experience and can also kind of lead us somewhere we're not intended to go, right? We want to
Hmm.
follow our own kind of
Hmm.
higher consciousness, not
Yeah.
music's kind of path it may be unfolding for us. So
Yeah, I
lyric
totally
free,
agree. Even, sorry, I totally
yeah,
agree. Even if there's like some beautiful, inspiring music or
yeah,
medicine music that have lyrics and they're
yeah,
very inspiring, but I definitely believe as well that even if it's inspiring and they're beautiful words and they talk to you, but at that time you want to talk to yourself, not someone else to tell you what to do. It's really an exploration of yourself, of your higher self. So lyric
yeah,
free is much better because you want to find the answer within, you don't want to find the answer in the song.
yeah.
uh yeah.
I agree. And I think it just save all those other beautiful lyrics for outside of the experience, right? Maybe post experience as you're kind of meditating on what's gone on. All appropriate, just not within the experience. So lots of great options out there. And my particular favorite is I just love Native American music in the
Mm,
experience. To me, it feels very like earthy and grounding and connected. And like that just works for me.
mm,
But by all means, like I want people to choose things that work well. So in general, binaural beats work very well. Ambient trance music works very well here. Absolutely, some of the like jazz classicals can work. It just does tend to be a bit more stimulating frequencies for brain. I
mm-hmm,
also am a big believer in like sound frequencies. So like the solfeggio healing frequencies, a lot of those types of
mm-hmm.
like frequencies can be very beneficial to the experience. It's really just choosing something that feels appropriate for you. I do tend to caution people about animal like noises. Sometimes if you choose something that's very earthy and has like birds, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that can be a bit distracting. So just maybe preview whatever you're planning to do first so that you don't have like birds of prey in the middle. That can be a little, I've had that happen. It's a little distracting. So, but I think
Oops. Sorry.
being thoughtful, yeah, being
And
thoughtful about music makes a ton of sense, and definitely choosing something that works. Silence is okay.
mm-hmm.
Except I think that that does open us up to having more distractions, right? Now we're hearing like the garbage man going by, or the neighbors are coming home from work, or cars going by. And I think that
Mm,
can be beautiful. We can fold those into experiences. It's just something to be thoughtful about. For the whole, I think that being with the music allows us to kind of be lifted and go to a different space rather than staying present where we are here.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important part. And I think that brings us to kind of our last little thing that I like to talk a little bit about is
Sure.
like the intention, right? So,
Yeah, the set part.
exactly, our mindset, right? So we want to think about, and this may be something we even start, right? Like days, weeks, months
Oh,
prior.
yes.
What do I want to get from this? Like, what am I trying to achieve? What's my intention? And maybe you agree or disagree with me, but I don't want people to choose very specific intentions. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
choose, like, I want to forgive my 5-year-old self for the thing or my grandmother, blah, blah, blah. I think when we choose really specific, kind of detailed, like intentions, we tend to chase the intention in the experience
Mm-hmm.
rather than to allow the experience to unfold before us.
Mm-hmm.
So I generally recommend people to be thoughtful and have some attunement around what they want to achieve here. What am I trying to transform? How do I want to see self? What do I want to heal?
Mm-hmm.
But when we set up the intention, I think it can give some beautiful architecture to the experience to just say something like, I am here to heal or to explore or
Mm-hmm.
to forgive, right? Some of these
Mm-hmm.
kind of conceptual framework without it being terribly specific. I
Mm-hmm.
think those specifics are very valuable in coaching, in psychotherapy, and all of the other places in life, and definitely post experience. It's simply that if I've had folks set these up and end up feeling like they're chasing to get the thing out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and that may not be what they're supposed to have or see or
Yeah.
experience. Do you agree?
I do agree, and I think that I would probably love to do a podcast just about intention because it's a more depth
Mhm.
conversation. Because it's what we may think at first, as you said, like I want to forgive that person. There's
Yeah.
maybe so much
Mhm.
behind, or also the tension you think you're chasing. There's so
Yeah.
much behind, and so we can go deeper into that to find what's the real intention.
Yeah.
And a simple example would be, and also like how we word the intention is very important.
Yeah.
Like a simple example would be, I had many people saying that their intention was, um, like, I want to know why I'm depressed, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a broad intention, as you said, but at the same time, it's when we are in this higher state of consciousness, uh, there's definitely an answer to our question, not always a linear answer, but
Mhm.
like if we ask why we're depressed, we're going to have answer of why we are depressed, right? And so just
Yeah.
showing the roots. But was it really the intention? Often, for example, with carrying on with this example, the intention is not really knowing why, but like be joyful. Like, and
Yes.
I'm shortened the whole process of going from why I'm depressed to I want to be joyful. And
Mhm.
so it's important to really, and that's where a coach, a therapist can help in the preparation to really understand what are your real intention behind. And it's really there's always something beautiful in a session that can come out and that
Mhm.
resonate much more with you,
Yeah.
and that you really are like, yeah, that's what I really want, but you
Yeah.
are fixated with something that you think you want, and it's normal. Like
Yeah.
as well as a coach, oops sorry, as a coach myself, having this external point of view, so and help from someone external to find your truth
Mhm.
is the absolute best.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's so much more in that goes into intentions, and they're
I,
so important because it's really, the intention is like set the energy where to go during the session, and so we can have even more benefit from that. That's why with some coaching or therapy session before to help us find
Mhm.
intention, and then we have the right intention going into the therapy, the treatment, and that will really have the maximum benefits and will it, and quicker at the same time. Otherwise it may take us many treatments just to find out that actually our intention was that one.
Exactly. It's like I use this analogy kind of loosely, but it's like we're chasing our tail, right? We might be going in these circles trying to find this thing or this belief we may have. And
Hmm.
only to realize that as we become the observer of self, that isn't the thing at all, right? Like there's something
Yeah.
before that or at the
Yeah.
root of that or aside from that. So I think that's why it's important. And I think you're so spot on. Working with therapists, coaches, all of that can really support us, I think, coming to those more direct truths, right? Like the things that
Hmm.
really help us hone in. And I think it's important to do these things, setting an intention or setting some framework, right? Like you just said, like it's setting like a trajectory, it's setting a forward momentum for this energy. I think that's very beautiful, but we have to remain equally as open to whatever it is that does come up, right?
Hmm.
So, because it's there, I think this is the hardest part is that we don't have control over all of it,
Hmm.
right? This may take off in a whole new direction or see us, offer us
Yeah.
something we haven't seen before. And I think we miss that when we're chasing something that we think it should be, like in
Hmm.
most of life, right? So we have to stay kind of open to the idea that we're here for whatever it is that comes up, whatever's presenting itself. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
definitely.
I use another analogy here normally. It's like
Mhm.
the intention is somehow is setting, yeah, this energy, the direction. But most of
Yeah.
the time is people mix intention with the expectation, in the sense
Mhm.
of like, okay, I want to be joyful. I don't know, whatever is the intention. And then they're already creating their mind a map of how that should shows up during the treatment. And much probably will show up in a way that is completely different. And then that's where you may be disappointed, because it's like, oh, but I wanted to be joyful, but the medicine showed me these other things. I don't understand that. And it's not. And the analogy is like, it's like you put on Google Map the address, and then you tell Google Map where how to go there. It's like, no.
Mhm. Totally.
You put the address so you know where you want to go, but you let Google Map guide you.
Exactly. You let the map do the map work, right? And I think that I always use this cartography kind of metaphor.
Hmm.
It's all the maps because I think the subconscious, the conscious patterns in our brain absolutely are like speaking to like these underlying wirings and like some of them are aware of like we're aware of and others we are not at all. So like pretending that we're aware of all of these like we're not. So there is a
Hmm.
bit of surrender here we have to give to say
Yes.
I don't know all of the things that are happening up there, but I'm okay witnessing and observing, right? I'm okay. And
Hmm.
I think that's oftentimes to pull it even further back, that's what these medicines can offer us is the opportunity to see ourselves with it as the observer of self, right? In a way that
Hmm.
we never the capacity we never have in our traditional daily lives to see ourselves and to understand maybe where this thing comes from. And I think you mentioned a lot about like, I want to feel joy. And sometimes I think we chase this idea of wanting to feel joy without ever giving ourselves permission to feel the pain too, right? Because
Hmm.
there's that duality. We have to feel them both. There are times to feel joy and there are times to feel pain or fear or sadness. And we have to honor them all as they move through us.
Hmm.
Otherwise they get a little stuck somewhere and then we find we're carrying them with us, right? Like we're carrying that suitcase of pain or fear. So it's important that we I think, acknowledge that it is, although we want to feel joy, no one is meant to feel joy every day, right? We're meant to feel all of the emotions as they come and
Hmm.
as they go. I think it's just that we're learning how to navigate them. And I think that's the map in my brain I'm always kind of picturing is this beautiful landscape. We're just kind of learning to navigate like the fear, the joy, the
Hmm.
happiness. exaltation, the excitement, all of it, so that we can stay present, so that we have access to the good ones, right? As much as to the ones that we need to feel. We have to feel fear, we have to feel pain.